When Daniel and Sarah stood at the altar 10 years ago, they believed love would always feel the way it did that day: effortless, exciting, and full of promise. They were best friends. They laughed at the same jokes, dreamed about the same future, and could hardly keep their hands off each other. Their connection felt electric. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. By their 8th year of marriage, things had changed. 2 children, demanding jobs, sleepless nights, and endless responsibilities slowly replaced candlelight dinners and spontaneous affection. They still loved each other deeply, but their sex life had become distant, almost mechanical. It wasn't that they didn't care, it was that they were tired. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Sarah sat quietly on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Daniel was in the kitchen, pretending to be busy. The silence between them felt heavier than any argument they'd ever had. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Do you ever miss us?" Daniel paused. He knew exactly what she meant. "I miss how close we used to feel," she continued softly. "Not just physically, but emotionally." Daniel walked over and sat beside her. "I do," he admitted. "I just don't know how we got here." That night wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no shouting, just honesty. And that honesty became the turning point. They realized something powerful. Intimacy doesn't disappear because love disappears. It fades when communication fades, when stress replaces connection, when assumptions replace conversations. So they made a decision not to blame each other, but to rebuild together. The first step was simple. They started talking. Not about bills, not about schedules, but about feelings, about fears, about desires they had been too embarrassed or too exhausted to express. Sarah confessed that she didn't feel attractive anymore. After 2 pregnancies and years of prioritizing everyone else, she felt invisible. Daniel admitted that he often felt rejected even when Sarah didn't intend to reject him. Over time, he had stopped trying because he didn't want to pressure her. Neither of them had realized the silent stories they were telling themselves. That conversation opened a door. They began setting aside intentional time for each other. Not just date night for social media photos, but real time. Phones off, kids with a babysitter. Even if it was just once a month, they protected it fiercely. They also learned that sex isn't just physical, it's emotional safety. It's feeling desired. It's knowing your partner sees you, not just as a co-parent or roommate, but as a lover. Instead of focusing on frequency, they focused on presence. Daniel began complimenting Sarah again, not casually, but sincerely. He noticed the way her eyes lit up when she laughed. He told her she was beautiful, even in sweatpants. Sarah began initiating small gestures, holding his hand in public, kissing him longer than usual, sending him a thoughtful text during the day. These small acts began to reignite something they thought was gone. They discovered that intimacy grows in everyday moments, in shared laughter while washing dishes, in hugging just a few seconds longer, in choosing kindness during disagreements. One weekend, they planned a short getaway, nothing extravagant, just a small cabin outside the city, away from noise, away from routine. The first night, they didn't rush into anything. They talked for hours about their early dating days, about dreams they had put on hold, about what they still wanted from life. Sarah realized something profound. She didn't need grand gestures. She needed emotional closeness. And Daniel realized that physical intimacy felt most fulfilling when it was rooted in emotional connection. That weekend wasn't about perfection, it was about rediscovery. When they returned home, life was still busy. The kids still needed attention, work deadlines still existed, but something had shifted. They were no longer drifting, they were intentional. Over time, their sex life improved, not because they followed a formula, but because they prioritized each other. They learned a truth many couples overlook. A healthy sex life in marriage is not about performance, it's about partnership. It's about asking, how can I make you feel loved? It's about understanding that seasons change. There will be times of passion and times of exhaustion, but what matters is the commitment to stay connected through all of it. Years later, when friends confided about struggles in their own marriages, Daniel and Sarah would share their story openly. "We didn't lose attraction," Daniel would say. "We lost communication. And when we found it again," Sarah would add, "everything else followed." Their marriage became stronger than it had been in their early years, not because it was effortless, but because it was intentional. They discovered that intimacy is like a garden. If you ignore it, weeds grow, but if you water it with attention, honesty, affection, it blooms again. Today, when Daniel looks at Sarah, he doesn't just see the woman he married, he sees the partner who chose to fight for connection. And when Sarah looks at Daniel, she doesn't just see a husband, she sees a man willing to grow. Their story isn't about perfection, it's about perseverance. If there is one lesson their journey teaches, it is this: a passionate marriage is not built on constant excitement, it is built on consistent effort. Sex life in marriage is not something you have or don't have, it is something you nurture. When couples choose vulnerability over silence, effort over neglect, and love over pride, intimacy doesn't just return, it deepens. And sometimes the most powerful spark is not the one you feel at the beginning, it's the one you rebuild together.